Hello, welcome to Classic Scientific Papers Review on why most published research findings are false. Dr. Mark Williamson, let's get into this paper. The citation of this paper is Ioannidis, JPA, so John, 2005. This is a classic paper on especially biomedical research and why most findings are false, right there in the title. It was published on PLOS Med. So the summary of this paper, as the title would suggest, is that most claimed research findings are false. Now, it's not just biomedical, but that's one area I think he's particularly thinking about. Now, some key factors that go into this claim, that there's a lot of false positives based on p-values. There can be a lot of bias via manipulation, selective reporting, etc., help drive the research findings being false, and things like focusing on one result across several independent tests. So just picking the one that worked and not even looking at the rest. Some interesting corollaries he brings up about this claim. First of all, like things like the smaller the size, the less likely the finding is true. Same for if the smaller the effect size, the greater the number and permissiveness of test relationships. That's all going to drive the findings to be less likely to be true. Same with things like having a greater flexibility in experimental design and analysis. If there's all sorts of ways you can analyze it, you can certainly massage it until a significant result pops out. The greater the vested interest and then the higher the scientific field, the less likely the findings are true. If people have a lot vested on it being true, or it's a very exciting field where you have to go fast and break things rather than to be slow and careful, you're going to get false positives. And so, what's the importance of this paper? Well, it's had since the middle of September 2025 over 14,000 citations. So, a lot of people have read and cited this. So, it's been very influential in the field, at least from citations. I think the table on in this paper on PPV, or positive predictive value of the different types of tests, have been really useful. You know, if we have a really adequately powered randomized controlled trial with little bias and one-to-one pre-study odds, you have a fairly good chance of getting a high positive predictive value. It goes down as you go into really low values where you're just discovery oriented exploratory research with massive testing. You're going to get very unlikely to have a true value coming out that stands the test of time. Now, further on, again, let's try to answer the question, how important has this been? Well, first of all, I think he outlined some helpful improvements that you can make to your research, to do better powered studies, avoid biases, target large effects for follow-up rather than just weak effects, and looking at the totality of evidence. I think those are all really helpful, would help move the fields of research forward. Um, and even things like pre-study registration when possible. And thinking beyond mere p-values, making sure you're not just saying, well, if it's a p-value of 0.05 without any other considerations, blah, blah, blah. You should really think more about your design and what you're trying to prove. Now, I think unfortunately, the real importance is less than we would have liked. I think this paper, from the citations, from the discussion across scientists and books, is that his idea has been discussed much, but I think it's been enacted little. So unfortunately, there's much more to be done. And he's gone on. He's had other papers in similar avenues. Like shortly afterwards, a couple of years later, he had the article "Why Most Discovered True Associations Are Inflated." He's looked at a lot of other things. So I think he's had a huge impact on the field of how to um, make studies reproducible, how to assess the truth of a lot of these research findings. But unfortunately, I think we're probably still in just about the same problem situation in research than when he first wrote this paper. All right, with that, that's another classic scientific paper review. Hope that was useful.